Thank you. I welcome everyone to the May 2024 Council meeting. I declare the meeting open at 6:32 p.m. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. We offer our respect to the elders of these traditional lands and to them, to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people past and present. So mobile phone, I kindly remind everyone to switch phone off or turn to silent. Recording of meeting proceeding. I advise the gallery that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the council website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, your presence may be recorded. In accordance with council governance rule, meeting may not be photographed, filmed, or recorded without the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. CEO, do we have any?
No, we haven't received any requests, Mayor.
Apologize for the virtual or ever apologize for the meeting tonight. We have been receiving the meeting from the meeting tonight is a Councillor Simon Crawford. Councillor, are we any other apology? I don't think so. We got 6 here. So leave of absence. So there's no leave of absence. Conflict of interest. In accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, I ask if any councillor have a conflict of interest in relation to any of the agenda item. Any conflict of interest, councillor? No. Okay, I would like to call for suspension of the standing order. Can I call for the councillor to supporting a standing order to honour the 100 years birthday of Mr. Wal Hopkins? Could I have the mover, Councillor Clark? Could I have the seconders, Councillor Carter? All in favour? Oh, thank you. Now, Councillor, I leave it in your hand.
Councillor Carter, I believe.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillors, I was about to stand then. We don't do that anymore, do we? It feels like the kind of occasion we should be standing for, and I will speak a little bit louder tonight because we have a very, very special guest here in the chamber. Walter Hopkins, a wonderful resident and lifelong servant of this community here in Maribyrnong, who turned 100 at the weekend. We might just, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not too often, that people get to turn 100, but I think the most remarkable thing, and we had the great honour, and I'd like to acknowledge Julie, who is here today, and his other 3 children, so Sue, Neville and Greg, who we all joined with on Sunday, Councillor Clark, Councillor Lamb and myself. It was a wonderful turnout of community and testament to all that Wal has given in his life for the betterment of our community. There are far too many accolades. We would be here literally all night, and I know Councillor Clark, well, I'll leave that to Councillor Clark. But let me just say that Wal Hopkins is the only resident to have been Citizen of the Year twice. I first met Wal in, I think, 2010. We were working on the centenary efforts for VU, but we were both, and I love it, Wal, that you've got the photo of it in your scrapbook, and I saw it on Sunday, but we both received awards in the Victoria University inaugural Alumni Awards. Wal received his Lifetime Achievement Award. Being that long ago, mine was the Rising Star Award. I don't know what that says, but we'll focus on his lifetime achievements. But it was a wonderful occasion then, and throughout the years, it's really been quite the inspiration to me to see just how much he has done in that 100 years and how much better the community is for that. And what I take away from Sunday, Wal, and I mentioned it to you just before, was that I now will listen to the Bluebird of Happiness when I'm looking for inspiration. It is a wonderful, uplifting and profound tune, and it's something that Wal has always drawn upon as to, I guess, inspire him in his role in civic participation and leadership. And it's certainly something that I will keep with me from you now, Wal. And his advice to all of us on the weekend was to accept what you have in life, because we all get dealt very different hands, but it's what you make of that. So accept what you have in life and make the most of what you have. And I think they're wonderful words to take away from that 100 years. I mean, from the list of accolades, you pretty much came out of the womb and you were giving back to community. So early in life were your contributions, and starting at the state school, I think in 1928. At Geelong Road State School, so quite extraordinary. So from all of us and from the city of Maribyrnong, Wal, I want to wish you the happiest 100th year. May you be blessed with good health, continued good health, the wonderful independence that we know that you enjoy so much, still living at home in the West. And obviously the love of community, family and friends. So happy birthday, Wal.
Yeah.
Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, Wally, I can only echo the sentiments of Councillor Carter. Friends, councillors, 15th of May 1924 to the 15th of May 2024, like a good black label Johnny Walker, still going strong. Fantastic stuff, Wal. What Councillor Carter said about Wally's capacity to contribute to the community is remarkable. You know, during the war years, he was only 16 years of age, and he was an acting scoutmaster. 16. They actually wanted to sack him because by rights you had to be 18, but they said no. If Wal was going to get the sack, it was going to have to be done by someone other than those around the group that was supporting Wal at the time, because they thought Wally Hopkins was nothing less than fantastic, and in fact better than so many others that they actually had on their books who were years older. I think Wally got his inspiration from his mother. He also learnt what not to do from his father. His wife, Evelyn, he was married to for almost 70 years, was an absolute stalwart and someone who was always there for you, Wally. She was a wonderful woman, Ev, and I know that you miss her terribly. We're lucky, councillors, friends. As Councillor Carter points out, almost from the time that Wally came out the womb, he was into everything. Scouts until, and by rights, I actually thought, and Wally told me, he was sacked from the Scouts when he was 96. Only to be told by the District Commissioner, Gerard White, no, he in fact is a life member, I believe,
An honorary commissioner for life.
For life. Absolutely outstanding. Beyond that, an umpire, lifelong member of the Umpires Association. Wally can't go back to Geelong very quickly. He was run out of town by the local Geelong supporters. It was something to do with 1 point, and Geelong West lost. He was quietly told by the local constabulary, don't come back, thanks, Wally. But a fantastic contribution. He did meet His Royal Highness King Charles III, and when he was Prince of Wales, and his good wife, Lady Diana Spencer. Wally, you've lived so many lifetimes in your 100 year. It's a joy to have celebrated your 100th birthday with you. Congratulations, mate. May you live many, many more years. Friends, I give you Wally Hopkins again. Join me.
Councillor. I would like to say a few words to Mr. Wall Hopkins. I have an opportunity that to visiting our residents turn 100 years old in the ACAP facility and also at their facility or any event, and an opportunity for me that presenting the council's certificate and award, and his is the warm wish from all of us. It's not many turn to centenary, and Mr. Wall is like sharp like he did, and he remember everything. I took a lot of photos from this OAM, and also with all the scrapbook. I love scrapbook. That's why I still have my red suitcase. That's why I love that. I love something memorable. So, but it's amazing. Councillor Clark and Councillor Carter said that he did amazing job. Twice in the council citizenships, and also with the OAM, and a lot of things that Mr. Wall Hopkins did achieve, and not himself, but for all the community. And on behalf of the community and Maribyrnong Council, we would like to all the best to you and your family. And I mean, he still thank you, his children, for looking after him. This is amazing. I spoke to him when I ring him at home. He still remember my name. So thank you so much for that. It really touched me. And again, and thank you for coming tonight too. Thank you. The best.
Your Worship, councillors, I don't think we've ever had someone 100 years old in Maribyrnong City Council at any council meeting, to the best of my knowledge.
Not come to our council,
No.
but I did come to the ACAP facility.
Yes.
To present them a certificate.
But Wally, you're the first to be
The first
here.
one. Yes.
Still making history,
Still
Wally.
making history. You're the first.
The
Another
history.
certificate.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff, Wall. All the best.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Julie,
you.
for
Julie,
bringing
for the family.
Mr. Walken here. Thank you. Okay, could I have call for the councillor to resuming standing order, please? Councillor Clark, seconder, Councillor Carter. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All those
The
in
next
favour?
one. Oh, those in favour. Sorry, Councillor. Now, we move into a public question time. I would like to explain the council's public question time arrangement and how public question time works. Members of the public are required to submit their question prior to the commencement of the meeting. Any matter can be raised so long as it is in accordance with the council governance rule. A maximum of 3 questions per person is permitted. As chair, I will decide who answers the question. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless an extension of public question time is resolved by council. So, could have public question time here, CEO. Now, the question number 1, Michelle Clark asked the following question. Can council confirm when the car park work between Bread Mill and McIver Resort will be completed? Previous date was the end of April, which has now passed. Current information at this site is non-committal on finished date, suggesting 10 to 12 weeks. Would you like to answer that, CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. The construction of the Brad Mill Boulevard is being undertaken in stages by Fraser's Property Australia as part of the development of the adjacent Brad Mill precinct. The first stage, involving the water and gas infrastructure improvements along Francis Street, was completed prior to Christmas. The second stage, which is currently underway, involves the construction of a new north-south connection from Francis Street, and works are expected to be completed around July 2024.
Thank you, CEO. So the second question, when Bread Mill finished using the car park between Bread Mill and McIver Resort, will the car park be returned to community use in its previous pothole filled state? Will it be a gravel car park or will tarmac be used?
Thank you, Mayor. Once the works are completed, the car park adjacent to McIver Reserve and the dog park will be returned for community use using crushed rock and gravel. Any future improvements to the car park will be delivered by Council as part of the implementation of the McIver Reserve Master Plan and subject to future budget.
Thank you. Question 3, what financial benefit is the council and by extension the community receiving from bread mill for car park being out of use to this date? What benefit is being received for the car park being used solely by bread mill for an additional underpin periods?
So, Mayor, the Fraser's Property Australia is occupying the car park, as people know, to enable the construction of the Bradmill Boulevard. And we have mentioned the north-south connection. As previously mentioned, the delivery of the Bradmill Boulevard is being undertaken as part of the adjacent development. The construction of the Bradmill Boulevard is being delivered at zero cost to the ratepayer. Council has not charged Fraser's for the occupation of the car park.
Thank you. Okay. The question, another question comes from Philip Morris, asked the following question. Will council commit to a thorough engineering assessment of the road and footpath in Blackwood Street? They are showing significant sign of damage and subsidence. This is causing issues for many of the property. Having spoken to the many residents of the street, they all report issues of cracking wall, sloping floor and door, gate either jamming or some not closing. The footpath is becoming increasingly uneven and it is a trip hazard. Especially at night, we need to determine what causing this and how it can be rectified.
Thank you, Mayor. And council officers have recently investigated the condition of the road pavement, stormwater drainage and footpath in Blackwood Street. A package of priority repair works has been developed and will be implemented within Council's routine maintenance program. Please note that it's considered unlikely that Council's civil assets are impacting the ground movement, causing issues to properties on Blackwood Street.
Thank you, Zio. Now the question from Philip again. If council is not able to commit to an assessment of the road and path condition in Blackwood Street, our fear is any lengthy delay to assessing and then remediating the streetscape, which will result in further damage as well as more cracking in our property and higher repair costs. Who would be responsible should this situation arise?
And just to clarify again, the council has assessed the road and path conditions and the council is proposing maintenance and remedial actions to both the footpath and the road where required, and yes, council will be doing those works.
Thank you. Okay, so then question number 3. Is council aware that Gemini has put a concrete power block around the base of the power pole and securing by 2 chains on the corner of Ballarat and Blackwood Street? It would appear to be an attempt to secure it from toppling. The pole is leaning in an angle into Blackwood Street. It appears to us as the only pole along Blackwood Street and Ballarat Street to have this safety provision.
And could I, thank you, Mayor, could I thank Philip Morris for bringing this to our attention. Gemini did not notify council of the works described in your question, and officers have now contacted Gemini regarding the purpose of the works and we're awaiting a response. But we're certainly watching that one and will act as soon as we need to.
Okay, thank you. Another question comes from Anton Misip. Asked the following question. What is the council doing to advocate on behalf of cyclist safety on the stretch of the road just before Moore Street and Ballarat Road and just after Moore Street and Ballarat Road, city-bound, where the cycling lane disappear and cyclists merge into the car lane?
Through you, Mayor, both Ballarat Road and Moore Street are arterial roads managed by the state government. Council officers meet regularly with the Department of Transport and Planning to review road safety and transport issues on the road network within the Maribyrnong municipality. Council officers will be discussing this matter with the department to request further investigation and response regarding your concern.
Okay, thank you. There are council also receiving several questions relating to Newark paddock. As per Government Rule 52.9, these questions have been grouped with a single response provided. The question comes from Mrs. Yvonne Bissieberger, asking the following question. Number one, friends of Newark paddock have been made aware of the council plan to install lighting along the Maribyrnong River Trail from Ballarat Road south to the Hopkins Street, with light pole to run along the boundary of the Newark paddock wetland at 20-meter interval. We thank the council for including us in their correspondence. However, we have major concern about the project proceeding in its current form. When will council conduct a comprehensive flora and fauna assessment and lighting impact study to determine the impact of night lighting on the aquatic, invertebrate and mammalian specified at the inhabit the wetland and riverbank area? So that's number one. The question number two is, given the proximity of light to pond area and bird route in Newark paddock, can council provide compelling evidence of the need of the permanent lighting along the particular area of the river's trail? Question number three, friend of Newark paddock has requested council undertake detailing biodiversity assessment before proceeding with this project. Will council pause the project until the result of this impact study are available to inform how or if the project should proceed? See you.
The Billfield questions, Mayor, we need to read out as well.
Oh,
This
okay.
is all part
So
of it.
there's a part of that as the grouping question. The question for Mr. Billfield asked the following question. Question number one, friends of Newark paddock have been made aware of the council plan to install 7-meter high light pole along the Maribyrnong River Trail from Ballarat Road south to Hopkins Street, with light to run along the boundary of the Newark paddock wetland at the 20-meter interval. We thank the council for including us in their correspondence. However, we have major concern about the project proceeding in its current form. When will council conduct a meaningful consultation with friends of Newark paddock and other interest parties regarding this lighting plan? Number two, how does this lighting plan align with council objective to enhance biodiversity and improving habitat within Newark paddock? Number three, how does this lighting project align with the council draft nature plan, which seeks to protect the place of ecological importance within the city of Maribyrnong municipality within the widely acknowledged lack of green space? Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. The Maribyrnong River Trail lighting project is part of a staged program to light the entire Maribyrnong River Trail as a major active transport link across the municipality and a key piece of passive recreation infrastructure. Following consultation with Friends of Newell's Paddock, the project section that interfaces Newell's Paddock has been paused to ensure that a thorough assessment of lighting impacts can be undertaken and any design solutions can be considered. Following this assessment, council officers will work with the Friends of Newell's Paddock on potential solutions.
Thank you, CEO.
Can
There
I
is,
ask
sorry.
a question just before we go on? Like, what will that actually entail? Because they asked some very detailed questions there about the nature plan and something else. About the lighting assessment and something. What are they? Assessment about mammals and birds, I think. So it would be good for them to have some more detail about what's actually going to be done, because they've written some very detailed questions there.
I'm sorry.
You're right, Sally.
I might need to take that on notice unless Patrick can provide anything.
Mr. Patrick, would you have to add some more on that? Yep.
Yes, through the
Thank you.
the chair, I can confirm that it'll be a detailed environmental impact assessment. particularly around considering fauna. Once we see those outcomes, we'll be considering and have considered different types of technology that might be available, or ultimately that the project may not proceed, but that would need to come back through the chambers for council's consideration, because at the moment it is an endorsed project of council's.
And are we consulting with Newell's Paddock, sorry, through the chair?
Yeah.
But is council consulting with them? I understand it sounds, they've had one meeting or something with the council officers, I guess, but are we sort of consulting with them through that process of developing the whatever a flora and fauna or whatever assessment we'll do, and a lighting impact assessment or something, I'm assuming? So
Well,
is that kind of the
answer
plan,
is
or?
yes. And we have consulted with them previously as well, but they've raised these extra concerns, so now we're addressing them.
Yep.
And we'll be working with them through the process.
Cool, thanks, that's good, thank you.
Councillor Thomas, thank you. Now, if there are no more questions, I declare the public question time closed. Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 6.1, confirmation of the minute of the previous council meeting, 23rd April 2024. I will call for Councillor to move that minute of the council meeting held on the 23rd of April to be confirmed. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I move that the council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on 23 April 2024.
Thank you. Could I call for a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Carter? Are there any questions or point of clarification, Councillor? Would the mover like to speak?
Formally moved, Your Worship.
Thank you. Would the second would like to speak to the motion? Thank you.
Seconded.
Okay. We now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay. All those again? No, again. I declare the motion's carried. Advise Council. There is no report from committee to the table at the meeting. Yep. Advise Council, there is no petition at the table of the meeting today as well. So officers report. Agenda item 9.1, quarterly performance and financial report period of ending 31st of March 2024. Could I call for a councillor to move the motion in regard to the agenda item 9.1?
Yeah,
Councillor
Councillor,
Clark?
one moment. Thank you. Councillors, I move that Council 1 notes the 2023-24 third quarter performance and financial report shown at attachment 1. 2, makes a fresh resolution in relation to the application of the rate rebate of properties affected by the October 2022 flood event as below. 3, pursuant to section 169(1) brackets A of the Local Government Act 1989, grants each owner of a rebatable land who meets the eligible criteria in Part 6 of this resolution upon application of rebate of 50% on the 2023-2024 third and fourth instalments of the rates and municipal charges, brackets, noting this rebate does not apply for the State Government Fire Service levy, end brackets. 4, grants the rebate to assist in proper development of the municipal district. 5, notes that the rebate notes that this rebate benefits the municipal community as a whole by financially supporting the restoration of flood-affected properties. 6, determines that each person will be eligible to receive the rebate if the person, A, is the owner of a rateable land impacted by the October 2022 flood event, B, makes application to council in the form determined by council's chief executive officer or delegate, and C, provides evidence showing that I, there is a dwelling on the land, second double I, the dwelling on the land was damaged by October 2022 flood events, and work is required to repair the damage caused to the dwelling on the land by October 2022 flood event, and 7, requests council's chief executive officer or delegate to reassess each unsuccessful flood rebate application received in 2024 against the criteria outlined in Part 6 of this resolution and notify those applicants of the outcome of this reassessment. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Could I call for Councillor second the motion, please? Councillor, Councillor Train? Okay, are there any questions upon a clarification, Councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, Your Worship. Councillors, firstly, I really have to acknowledge and thank Executive Director Lisa King and Director Mark Connors, responsible for our finance section here at Council. You have what is best referred to as one of the most unenviable hygiene activities that Council needs to perform. I say hygiene activities insofar as, like lights, if the lights are turned on, everyone's happy. If the lights are turned on but they don't come on, no one is happy. When you turn on your computer and it works, you are happy. If it doesn't work, you are overwhelmingly unhappy. So too with our economic performance report. We're fundamentally happy enough, but if we found ourselves in a dire situation, the ire of Council and the community would be deafening. It would be enormous. The work that's being done to maintain the capacity of this council to operate a balanced budget is nothing less than extraordinary. I have to say, councillors, we have improved our underlying operating result as at 31 March to $80,508. That's quite remarkable. We are still in the black, councillors. And this is going through a remarkably difficult period for all of us in terms of costs, particularly capital costs. And as some may be aware, building costs have increased, and it is now a matter of public knowledge that building costs have increased by 40%. And even within that particular context, we are still running in the black. Again, Ms. King and Mr. Connor, Chief Executive, outstanding work. I've got to say, councillors, I'm proud that 61 of the council plan actions identified at the third quarter, 25 or 41% of these have been completed. And 15% of the actions are progressing. And 27 or 44% of the actions are progressing to target. This is remarkable. Council's work is being done. We're maintaining a financially responsible position. We're not having to increase any of our level of debt. I think, again, this is a testament to the remarkable work of the Chief Executive, our executive leadership team, and every single council worker that we have. I thank you all on behalf of this council for a magnificent effort in holding the line, but more than just holding the line, delivering services. Your Worship, councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded. Mayor, I think Councillor Clark's spoken. Call it.
Thank you. Any other speaker for the motion? Any speaking? Okay, I would like to say a few words. I also would like to thank you, the Chief Executive Officers and the Governor, the Director of Corporate Service, Mrs. Lisa King and Mark O'Connor, for managing that financial budget and try to find the balance, as Councillor Clark said, that's very difficult because we should try to, and we're still thinking for the last few years with the pandemic, it's very difficult for everyone, every family. The cost of living is very, very expensive, and people found it very, very hard, but we still remember people suffering with a flood, and we still remember them and caring for them. I can see that we are really caring and supporting council. I thanks again for all your hard work and all your team. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. So any speaker against the motion? No, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, so now I declare the motion is carried. Item agenda 9.2. Election period policy governance rule. I call for the council to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.2. Councillor Thomas.
That council adopt the election period policy (brackets governance rules) shown at attachment 1.
Thank you. Could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Carter. Anyone? Are there any question upon the clarification, councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Thanks to the officers for putting this together. It's, I think I said before it went out for consultation, these are important documents, they're important policies for council to have, so that, the community has confidence in the process of elections. And probably just the one thing to note for any aspiring candidates, that the candidate nomination period starts on Monday the 9th of September and closes on Tuesday the 17th. So put that in your diaries if you're thinking of running. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Thank you. Any speak for the motion? Any speak against the motion? Now with the motion to the vote, all those in favour? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda 9.3, public transparency policy. I call for the councillor to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.3. Councillor Thomas.
Yep, that council adopt the public transparency policy shown at attachment 1.
Thank you. I call the councillor to second the motion. Councillor Tran. Are there any questions for point of clarification, councillor or councillor Jorge?
Just a question, I would mind a little bit more information on the section, I think it's page 107, titled Availability of Council Information. Obviously, if things are determined to be confidential information, obviously they're not, they're thus. The second point there is release of the council information has been determined by the Chief Executive Officer or appropriate council officers being contrary to the public interest. Obviously, public interest is defined a bit later, as broadly as it can be in a document like this. But I'm just sort of wanting a little bit more clarification around the authority given there to, quotes, appropriate council officer. CEO understandable, but, quotes, appropriate officer to make that sort of decision. Just a bit more clarification.
Yeah.
If I could answer through the chair, and Lisa King may wish to add. Obviously I have overall responsibility for the council as the CEO and make those major decisions. And anything that people ask for during the election period we need to make available to all candidates. On this one, I think it's relating to kind of small matters which people have jurisdiction over, but Lisa, could you clarify that for me?
Thank you, CEO, and I missed the intro, so my apologies, councillor, but I think I understand the question. So, in the spirit of transparency, most information will be available unless it meets those criteria around confidentiality or not in the public interest. So we do a lot of education within the organisation to make staff aware of the obligation to do so.
Is it okay? All right, thank you. Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Thank you. Would the second would like to speak for the motion?
Formally seconded, Chair.
Okay, and it's speaker for the motion? And it's speak against the motion? No, so now I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion's carry. Okay, agenda item 9.4, Community Grant Program Initiation Report. I call for councillor to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.4. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 note the annual 2024-25 Community Grants Program initiation and timelines, and 2 endorses the Community Grants Program Guidelines 2024-2025 shown at attachment 1.
Thank you. Okay, would I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Thomas? Are there any questions or point of clarification? Okay, would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just very briefly, Your Worship. Councillors, look, we've got $255,000 again up for the Community Grants Program, and I do say to the community, the program will in fact open on the 9th of July. A great day is the 9th of July, and will close on Thursday the 22nd of August. This is an opportunity, if you have a program that really is going to advance the amenity, the well-being, the general festive occasion that we have in our city, please apply. We look, and I've got to, and I do note, we are the festival city. This was a name or nomenclature given to us by Councillor Carter, and I thank her for her diligence in pursuing the Festival Cities agenda. What we can do to change the emotional tenor of our community is provide opportunity for engagement. And these grants that we offer are looking to facilitate greater opportunity for pleasure, greater opportunity for engagement. It adds to the community and social lustre of our city. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just two brief things. You know, Council's got an enormous commitment to social justice and to equity, and we, at the last council meeting, I think it was, that we approved the social justice framework. So anyone who's probably thinking of developing a grant application would be a good idea to have a read of that document as well, and just to sort of check out the range of, I guess, priority areas or groups, particularly First Nations led projects, but for other identified priority communities, and there's a list in the council report. And also just to note that there are 2, I think, workshop/information sessions, so it's worth getting along to one of those if you're thinking of submitting an application, so officers can help you out.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any speaker for the motion? Are there any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 9.5, reducing harm from alcohol and other drug policy 2023 to 2028. Can I call councillor to move the motion in regard to the agenda item 9.5? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 notes the outcome of the community consultation process following the adoption of the draft policy, and 2, endorses the reducing harm from alcohol and other drugs policy 2023 to 2028 shown in attachment 1.
Thank you. Could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Thomas? Are there any questions or point of clarification, councillor? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, again, just very briefly, Your Worship. Councillors, the intention of the reducing harm from alcohol and other drugs policy is very much going to provide council with a direction for the prevention and minimisation of alcohol and drug-related harm in our city. It really does reaffirm our commitment to reducing the supply, the demand and harm that alcohol and drugs really foist on our community. We are looking to managing the impact of alcohol and other drugs based on very much a social justice and harm reduction perspective. And I think that this is, again, a codification of an advance of understanding that alcohol and various substances, other drugs, needs to be understood in a framework that is underpinned by a health policy agenda. We are looking not to punish, we are looking to preserve the health and well-being of those who have been impacted upon by these substances. And I think we need to be clear. Alcohol, most particularly, is a drug. Most damage that's done out in our community as a result of substance misuse is undertaken as a result of alcohol use or misuse. If we could all embrace a harm reduction agenda when it comes to substance use and misuse, I think our state, our nation, would be a better place. From a financial perspective, I think we would find our prisons considerably reduced in size if we could actually embrace a harm reduction, a health agenda when it comes to these matters. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the seconder would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks. I echo what Councillor Clark has said around harm minimisation, and I'm pleased that that's our approach. And I know that council officers did a lot of consultation within the sector, which is great to see, and we took on quite a number of their suggestions for how to sort of improve the original document, and we've sort of made some other commitments where we couldn't include it in the document to continue to work with those agencies around assisting people in our community who are harmed by alcohol and other drugs. So I just wanted to thank officers, but also those other agencies for working with us on developing and finalising the document.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Are there any speaker for the motion? Councillor Jorge.
Just briefly, I think the general argumentation in support of the policy is already being outlined. I just wanted to specifically highlight, I think given we are the festival city, which has just come up before, I'm very glad to see that part of what's in our policy here is advocacy towards state in particular, I suppose, and certain agencies for pill testing, because I think that's particularly important in terms of our youth population in the context of our harm minimisation framework.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 9.6, Integrate Water Management Plan 2023 to 2033. Can I call Councillor to move the motion in regard to this item 9.6? Councillor Thomas?
Yes, that council endorse the Integrated Water Management Plan 2023 to 2033, shown at attachment 2.
Thank you. Can I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Tran. Are there any questions upon the clarification, councillor? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just say a few things. The management of water, for those who don't know, is a slightly complex issue, and council is only one of the sort of players in the complexity of who gets to manage water and how they do that. We're part of the Maribyrnong Catchment Integrated Water Management Forum, and the processes that have been going on for a number of years to develop catchment-wide integrated water management plans, and of course council's own plan sort of falls out of that, and it aligns well with the strategic I guess, context, not just of the integrated water management plans, but also with the healthy waterway strategy that Melbourne Water has, and other sort of statewide or state-based and driven strategic documents. So, you know, that's good to see. I think the other thing that I have enjoyed reading in the document is I think the elevation or the profile of needing to work with traditional owners, and the use of language across the document, and recognising the importance of our river, what I call our river, the Maribyrnong River, which is of significant importance to particularly the Bunurong community, but also the Wurundjeri as well, the further up the river that we go. So, yeah, thanks to officers for putting this together. I think it covers, you know, both the social and the environmental and the cultural importance of water in our communities. And yes, I'm hoping that we'll be able to all support that.
Thank you. Would the second will have to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, Mayor. I think the plan speaks for itself, but sort of to get down to into the nitty-gritty components of it, which some residents might miss, not by virtue of the fact that they didn't want to read the plan, but by virtue of the fact that they may just not have any time. One of the questions that may be asked and has been answered here is a question about flood management, and how Maribyrnong will seek to go forth, proceed with flood management. It won't be addressed in this particular plan, as has been noted, and the particular reason is because that is a part of Council's flood management plan. That comes as a separate document and is continuously updated to reflect obviously present times and current times. And there are a variety of other recommendations that have been suggested in feedback that have not been included for a whole variety of reasons. I note that council officers have actually included those particular reasons and justifications as to why we haven't included them. It's not just a blatant no, we're not including it. There are explanations, there are reasons. And as Councillor Thomas has stated as well, it's a complex system that requires the City of Maribyrnong as well as our other stakeholders and shareholders to really work alongside each other to make this plan actionable in the first place as well. So if you do have the opportunity, have a good read of it. It does address quite a few queries and questions, and I do appreciate that council officers have taken a substantive amount of time to try and help the community and try to be as clear as possible. I endorse it to you, Mayor.
Okay, I need a speaker for the motion. I need a speaker against the motion.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, is there anyone, anything here?
Just very briefly to say, I just want to echo the sentiments of both Councillor Thomas and Councillor Tran here. Water management, particularly the water management plan for the Maribyrnong River, has to be seen as something that is treated with a high level of sensitivity. I know, and I think all of us have experienced the rather ignominious outcome of the horrible floods. It's just shocking. People's lives have been affected. And there can be a very simple solution. Some might suggest, well, let's just dam the Maribyrnong upstream. But can I, and Councillor Thomas has alluded to this, you know, the importance and the history of the Maribyrnong River in relation to our First Nations brethren, kindred, can never, ever, ever be overstated. You know, the Keilor cranium, which is an archaeological find, I think back in the 1930s, if I remember correctly, again was one of those finds that demonstrated exactly how long the First Nations people, our Aboriginal ancestors, had been here and habitated the river. So the idea of simply damming the river to mitigate the flooding, that's from a practical perspective great, but what does it potentially do in terms of accessing our history, the history of the First Nations people, by damming this part of the river? I think it would be a terrible loss. We need to be a bit more sensitive. We need to explore all options. You know, in 2009, I spoke to the then Minister Tim Holding, trying to advocate for some understanding that the wall around Flemington was going to be potentially problematic for the Maribyrnong community. Sadly, I have to say, councillors, that advocacy did fall on deaf ears. I would be hopeful that all involved in this process going forward are a little bit more sympathetic and understanding that we need solutions that are going to be caring of all communities involved. I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Are there any speaker for the motion? Are there any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 9.7, Maribyrnong Flood Community Recovery Committee. Can I call for Councillor to move the motion in regard to the agenda item 9.7? Councillor Carter.
That Council 1 appoint the following new members to the Maribyrnong Community Recovery Committee with their term concluding June 2025. A. Andrew Montero. B. Joel Butts. C. Mary Cameron. 2. Appoint Martina Holland as the independent chair of the Maribyrnong Community Recovery Committee with their term concluding June 2025. And 3. Appoint Councillor Sarah Carter. Just looking around. Right. I'm very happy to continue.
Yes.
As a member of the Maribyrnong Community Recovery Committee until the end of the council term, 26th of October 2024.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I call Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Tran. Are there any questions or point of clarification, Councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
I will very briefly. Just it's wonderful to see that we had a review at the time that we'd marked when we first set up to establish the recovery committee some 3 months after the floods. We had in there a review period, so it was something that we were due to do, but it was something really, I think, it was a useful exercise. And I think one of the great things that came out of it was the need for an independent chair. Recovery is obviously a very, very long process. The community are still hurting. They're still living with a lot of trauma. And I know it, as the days get shorter and the weather gets cooler and, we have more rain, there is a lot of concern in the community. And it has been, I guess, deepened in more recent weeks with the release of the Melbourne Water Report. It's wonderful to see that we will have that independent chair, that there's support from council to continue that committee. We've seen tonight the benefits of having an advisory committee. We learned early on that the rates rebate was a really practical thing that council could do within its remit to give some relief to ratepayers, affected by the floods. And there have been a multitude of other things that have come out of those monthly meetings, community days, and gatherings and support for residents and that connection to other local providers and support services. I'd like to thank the outgoing members that were there, probably, that sudden onset of a disaster, and to be giving up your time when you're not only trying to get on with life, but trying to build your life, rebuild your life. It was a huge ask of residents so early on to come and speak, not only on behalf of their experience, but those of their neighbours at a time when they really were hurting. So I want to thank them because it was an enormous commitment. I also want to thank the new community members that we have that have stepped up. It's wonderful to see that we have 3 new appointments, and I think that will bring some fresh perspective. So it's always wonderful with any kind of advisory committee or board to have that renewal, and I look forward to working with those 3 and continuing to report back to council laws on what more we can be doing that comes out of those meetings to support our residents, flood affected residents at this time and into the future. I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Would the seconder would like to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, Chair, I think Councillor Carter has spoken quite wonderfully to what the report seeks to do and what our committee seeks to do in the first place as well. I'd like to commend as well the outgoing committee members, as well as the outgoing chair, as well as the incoming independent chair. Councillors are very well aware of Martina's record. We're very well aware of her experience, and indeed believe she's quite an outstanding pick for us as a chair for our local CRC. Also, I'd like to endorse Councillor Carter and her reappointment to this committee, albeit to the very end of our council term, seeing as she was heavily involved from the very start of the recovery, and as such it's quite fitting that she sees it to the very end as much as she can. Councillors, I endorse the motion, and I wholeheartedly support the new members of our committee and our community as well.
Thank you. I need a speaker for the motion. I need to speak against the motion. I would the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, I declare the motion is carried. The next agenda item 9.8, submission to the National Adaptation Plan and inquiry to the climate resilience. Can I call for Councillor to move the motion in regard to agenda 9.8? Councillor Thomas?
Yep, that Council 1, note the submission to the National Adaptation Plan shown at attachment 1. 2, endorse the submission inquiry into climate resilience shown at attachment 2.
Thank you. Can I call for Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Holcake? Thank you. Are there any questions or point of clarification, Councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I will just speak a little to the motion. So we've got two separate submissions. One is a submission to a federal process, and the other is submission to a state process. They're a very good read. Thanks to the officers for putting them together, because I think they've really articulated very well the need for funding and getting right an adaptation plan at the national level. Adaptation's not easy, it's expensive, it takes time, and it takes sort of an investment not just from local government, and often it's beyond the sort of financial capabilities of local government. And I must admit that the most recent budget, the federal budget, unfortunately didn't allocate any funding to the National Adaptation Plan, which is, I think, for me personally, a huge disappointment, and I'm pretty sure probably across the local government sector, a huge disappointment, because we are at the forefront, and our communities are, of climate change, and we bear a lot of the responsibility for climate risk and for climate adaptation measures, and we are the government with the least resourcing to be able to manage that and respond in the way that we need to. So, sorry, that's just an aside. But and I want to also thank the I think it was the Western Alliance for Greenhouse Action who led the submission on behalf of all of the 8, I think, Greenhouse Alliances, and Councillor, member of the Western Alliance for Greenhouse Action. A very strong submission there, and I think very well articulating resilience from a social perspective, and particularly how climate impacts on the most vulnerable in our communities, and in particularly how it impacts on housing availability and housing standards, which is really, crucial to sort of having, properly climate resilient housing is a very important part of keeping our communities healthy. So thanks to everybody who contributed to this, and let's hope that both the levels of government take on board what we and others have included in our submissions. Thanks, Ms.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the seconder would like to speak to the motion?
Thanks,
Councillor
Mayor.
Holcake.
I just briefly wanted to speak to some of the content in the second submission, the inquiry into climate resilience, because I think it's particularly noteworthy in terms of what future councils, and more importantly, the community in general. That second submission refers to the fact that Victorian councils are roughly responsible for about $140 billion of community assets and infrastructure, including all the things that we know, roads, etc., etc., etc. It also points out that a recent economic analysis of the direct risks to council-owned community assets from climate hazards in Greater Melbourne has been assessed at averaging roughly 90 to 120 million a year as it stands, but likely to rise to double that within the next 20 years. That gives you a sense of the challenge, I think, for councils, even simply at a raw financial sense. And that's not taking into account what was pointed out very eloquently at the Climate Emergency Conference, but is available to anybody, who I suppose, interested in the science, which is that climate change does not happen. It is not happening just quantitatively, but happens qualitatively. So we cannot really predict how much of a runaway impacts there will be. So quite likely we can probably say that those financial estimates in terms of the burden on local government, just in Melbourne, will be probably much larger. And that's a really big challenge, and maybe just it brings home, I think, the importance of these. This is not just like sort of fuzzy policy. It's actually very concrete and is affecting and will affect councils very directly. And you can be certain too that in the context of tight purse strings, there won't always be the federal or state money available that there has been when there's been less regular catastrophes. Obviously there can be a certain amount of money for Lismore and so on and so forth when there's not 10 Lismores happening in a year. But when there is, there'll be less of that money available. Probably, I don't know the specifics, but probably something that we ourselves have faced, I think, with the Maribyrnong floods. There's only so much money to go around, state and federal. So I think this really highlights the challenge of climate change on local government and how much we're going to have to work on it. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any speaker for the motion? Are there any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 9.9, Footscray Park Advisory Committee. Can I call for the councillor to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.9? Councillor Train?
Through the Chair, the officer's recommendation that Council 1 adopt the Footscray Park Master Plan Review Advisory Committee terms of reference shown in attachment 1, and 2, note that an expression of interest process for membership of the Footscray Park Master Plan Review Advisory Committee will be conducted, with a further report to be presented to Council to recommend the selection of committee members in September 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Train. Could I call for councillor to second the motion? Councillor Carter? Are there any question or point of clarification, Councillor? Councillor
Yes.
Carter? Yep.
Through the chair, we received a letter today from the Friends of Footscray Park, and I thought whilst we are having this conversation in the chamber, perhaps we could clarify, or so some of the questions that were put to us, because I thought it would be quite simple. There's a few questions in there that could be easily resolved and explained.
Thank you.
One being, Your Worship, through the chair, what is the process? We have a standard process for expressions of interest. We've had quite a few in recent months with many committees. Can we please have the responsible director or CEO explain the process, the expressions of interest process?
CEO or Director, Mr. Pat Jett?
Thank you, and through the Chair. So, following pending Council's decision tonight, we will be publishing on our website a criteria as part of the selection process for the resident sections only. The stakeholders will nominate their own representatives, clubs and so forth, but for the broader community who can apply, there'll be a selection criteria, and broadly that'll be around a demonstrated connection to the site and not representing one of the other groups or categories, an ability to represent a broad cross-section of community interests and perspectives, and capacity and availability to participate for the duration of the committee's operation. But yeah, as I said, that'll be published on the website pending tonight's decision.
Thank you. Is that okay with Councillor Carter?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do have follow-up questions
Sure,
because I just want to get
Go
a
for
few
it.
explanations in while we can, and thank you for clarifying, Director Jess, that the stakeholder groups, because they were also referenced in the letter, that they will be appointed separately. The next question through the chair is, could we please have an explanation for why this advisory committee takes into account a number of relational sites, not just what we would typically, or what is set out in the Footscray Park master plan? So obviously we've got the Quarry Park in there, Henry Turner South. There's a few sites, but if we could please have an explanation as to why it is a broader remit for the advisory committee.
Director?
Yes, thank you,
Jeff,
through
thank
the chair. So from a public open space planning perspective, it's prudent to look at those number of sites as a precinct. They are connected directly, and we have multiple stakeholders using both sites at the same time. And when we have larger events, we have both sites used at the same time for things like car parking. So from an infrastructure perspective, it makes sense to look at it as a whole precinct and how it can be best planned to work across both sites for not just current population but future needs long into the future.
Thank you. Any?
I do
Yeah,
have one
yeah.
more question. With regards to the council policy legislation, agenda item 9.9, council's proposed terms of reference seeks to limit matters for consideration for new master plan to the council plan 21-2020 to 2025. There is a proposal put forward by the Friends of Footscray Park that we should be also including for reference when the committee meets the heritage plan, the open space strategy, the open space strategy 5-year review, the Maribyrnong River Design Guidelines, Waterways of the West Maribyrnong River Plan, Maribyrnong, Urban Forest Strategy, Memorials in Public Open Space, Maribyrnong Public Toilet Strategy, Maribyrnong Bicycle Strategy, and the new Footscray Hospital and Education Precinct Advisory Plan. I think that seems perfectly reasonable to broaden those as reference documents, but I just wanted to see, because we will be voting on this tonight, whether that's something through the chair that could be taken into or considered in the scope of what will be considered.
Yeah, the
Can I
director.
just ask, point of clarification, as reference documents?
As reference documents.
I have
yeah.
no problem with that.
Okay.
I just thought we wouldn't need to suspend or defer this, because that could be quite easily
As
something.
reference documents, yeah, sure.
Yeah, director.
Just to confirm through the chair, the list provided wasn't exhaustive, and more than happy to add those as reference documents, absolutely.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Okay.
That's
Thank
all.
you. Yeah.
Nice, Councillor Carr.
Excuse me. Oh, God. Now, would the mover would like to speak, or it is? Would the mover would like to speak, Councillor Tran?
Am I the mover?
So
Can I do that?
No, you're the mover.
Oh, apologies, Mayor.
I
Councillor
remember.
Carter. Look, Councillor, this does not come as a surprise to any of the councillors in the chamber tonight. And indeed, we hope that this provides council laws present and future with the opportunity to have robust discussions with the community in relation to what is effectively Maribyrnong's largest park, a heritage park as well. We have our community stakeholders, especially the likes of Friends of Footscray Park, who've raised questions tonight, raised those same questions and queries, should they be appointed to the Footscray Master Plan Review Advisory Committee. I also hope the council considers revising the name and providing a more simpler name. That's a bit of a mouthful as we go forward. But I will note to the community and to those who will read this report in the end, it's quite concise as to what type of appointments will be made and who will be appointed. And as Patrick has alluded to, those of you who are part of the stakeholder groups, so the likes of the Community Bike Hub, the Druids Cruise Club, so on and so forth, will also be appointed with your nominated representatives. You'll also see that our focus on our traditional owners is not taken away, it's not left behind. We are well aware of our obligations to our local community members in terms of the traditional owners, and we are wanting to include them in the process as well, completely noting and understanding that there will come a time where those particular organisations will be overwhelmed with requests like these. Nonetheless, we want to include them in the process. We would never leave them outside of this particular process ever again. I can only endorse the particular plan, the particular advisory committee in terms of reference, and I could endorse the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Train. Now, would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, councillors, we're all aware because this motion before us tonight comes out of a motion only a few months ago when we were looking at the restoration and the preservation and of Footscray Park, the Western Lawn, which is looking magnificent, by the way. It's looking fantastic. But our community, given the history of the Footscray Park Advisory Committee, the master plan, there was a broad acknowledgement from council that a lot of the repair that need to be done whilst we're restoring the lawns was in the reputational and that relation with our community. And the community has sought assurances from us that they will be consulted, that they will be part of the conversation, their views part of our considerations going forward, and to have a mechanism set up. And unlike the previous advisory committee, which was only over the lifespan of a development of a master plan and then the consultation period, something that will outlive this term of council and ensure that those keen interest community stakeholders all have a seat at the table when we are considering any future works at Footscray Park. And I don't think it hurts that we've got those other sites around it in the mix, because when we talk about overflow or events, you know, what's happening in one open space will impact others. So I think it doesn't hurt to have that holistic view of those broad, because they are broad uses. We're looking at we're prioritising community use, and to ensure that we're not doing one thing that then unintentionally impacts the other. So I think this will give those assurances and provide that structure, and I hope go some way to repairing that relationship with those key residents and stakeholders. And I would also extend the invitation. I mean, we're adopting this now. There'll be a review, I'm imagining, at some point into the committee, but also for those committee members who put their names down and end up on the committee, to always come back to us if it needs rejigging, if something's not quite working, if it turns out that the remit is too broad, which I can't see, but if it does, it's an ongoing conversation. So this is just a safeguard, a legacy to ensure that there is a process in place that is transparent and accountable and reports back directly to the council. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Any speaker for the motion? And Councillor
You go first.
Thomas?
Oh, you go. I went first last time.
Councillor
I've always forgotten what I was going to say.
Okay, I can go first.
I'll remember now.
I just wanted to probably pick up on a little bit of what Councillor Carter said about, you know, how we kind of arrived at this point, and really it's the eyes of the community and the keen interest in sort of getting it right at this, what is one of our, if not our premier kind of open space across the city, at least it's in the top two. So really a sort of a big thanks to those community members who are consistently, alerting us to how they feel about what we're doing, but also committed to, working alongside council to make sure we do get it right on behalf of the community. So I do want to kind of give them a shout out, because they're, they're consistently concerned, and they're talking to each other, they're talking to councillors, they're talking to council officers, they're talking amongst themselves and with the wider community, and they're really focused on making sure that it stays our number one or number two, wherever it is. I don't want to kind of cut another open space out, but that it stays like, as the enormous community asset that it is. So
Well
thanks to
said.
them.
Councillor Hokeda.
I just wanted to say, one, that I think it's important that as a council, and hopefully future councils, In terms of the context that this sort of advisory committee is working in, that we be open and transparent about just the simple reality that there are competing interests for our green space among the community I'm talking about. And when we have such little green space, that should inform or, be a sort of a context that we're not only aware of but vocalise, because there's no point pretending it's not the case. There are competing interests for limited amount of green space. Now, the second point I want to make is sort of related tangentially to that, and that is with an advisory committee that's this big, getting them to actually, meet in a way that's representative, or as representative as it looks on paper, will be a major challenge, as we all know. All of us have sat on advisory committees, and we know how the numbers dim after the first couple of meetings. And I think there has to be some real thought put into that if it's going to be that genuine representation, as broad as possible, of all those different interests and so forth. So think about how they're organised, the times of day and everything else, the logistics of it, basically, so that we can get as many of those people actually participating in the advising.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speaker for the motion? Any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 9.10, awarding of contract 1223 to 23 Quarry Park Landfill Rehabilitation. Can I call for Councillor to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.10? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 award contract number 1223-23 Quarry Park Landfill Rehabilitation to Multiworks Australia Proprietary Limited to the value of $2,350,730, excluding GST. 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute contract number 1223-23 Quarry Park Landfill Rehabilitation to Multiworks Australia Proprietary Limited, and 3, notes that the contract sum exceeds the existing budget and approves the funding shortfall of $688,730 from the Open Space Reserve in 2023-2024 to supplement the $1,662,000 in the 2023-2024 Capital Works budget. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can I call for the Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Thomas? Are there any question or point of clarification, Councillor? Yeah, Councillor Carter?
Through the chair, I'd just like to check, when we had the briefing on this, given the scope of the works and I guess the site being of great value and interest to a lot of stakeholders, I did request that we would have comms ready and things like that. Has that been done, and will that be done to communicate what these works are?
Mm-hmm. Okay, CEO?
So through the chair, there are comms, should you vote in favour of this tonight, prepared to go out. And I'll just look at the Director, Patrick Jess, and I think we've got an ongoing communications plan as the works
They're just
commence.
large works, and they have things being proposed, so I would hate for residents to get the wrong idea about what we might or might not be doing down there.
Absolutely,
Okay.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Well, thanks, Your Worship. But councillors, I can only speak really to the process of the awarding of the contract, and that's the substance of the motion that's before us. The detail of the context in which the work is taking place very much rests with matters considered in the previous item, Footscray Park Master Plan. Works will continue to be done at Footscray Park, at Quarry Park. They need to be done. We're reclaiming land that originally was a public dump site. I have no illusions. I remember it well in the early 1960s as a boy travelling through that area. It's wonderful to see exactly how well the area has been remediated. But further to that, we are undertaking further rehabilitation works. These works are not inconsequential or insubstantial when it comes to sheer sums of money, in excess of $2 million worth of works here. It adds again to the overall level of community well-being. I must say, councillors, although Councillor Harris speaks, and I think reasonably, that we are short on open space. We're not as short as they are in Melton or Brimbank, or I believe Wyndham, comparatively. However, what we have needs to be preserved and needs to be developed in accord and in consultation with our community, and this is the commitment of this council. And I believe that while we have an engagement process that takes on board the multiplicity of views that are abroad in our community around land use, particularly open space land use, while we're prepared to engage in that dialogue, our city is all the better for it. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Thank you. Any speaker for the motion? Councillor Carter?
Thank you, just through the chair. And I just want to point out that these are works that we're required to do, these rehabilitation works, and they're actually in response to the EPA post-closure pollution abatement notice, PAN 900-8310, that was issued for the site. So it's actually a statutory obligation that council have to. And if you think to all those years ago, as Councillor Clark was saying, this wasn't really considered open space. It's something that we've created, and it's taken a significant amount of investment of time, resources and money to make that because of the contamination. But just wanted to point out that these are works that we are required to do, and an EPA post-closure pollution abatement notice has been served. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Will any speaker for the motion? Any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, I declare the motion's carried. Agenda item 9.11, amendment to 2024 council meeting schedule. I call for the council to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.11. Councillor Thomas?
That council, in accordance with clause 10 of its governance rules, adopt the amended meeting schedule for the months of September 2024 and November 2024, shown at table 1 in this report.
Thank you. Could I call for the councillor to move the motion?
No, that's
second.
moved it, second.
Second, so Councillor Clark.
Thank you.
Any question for point of clarification? Now, would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Only just to say that these are, minor amendments, just in relation to the timing of the local government elections this year, and it doesn't diminish. I'm pretty sure the number of open meetings that council will have. It's really just an administrative change, and the officers have got everything organised as usual. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Again, just only to acknowledge the fabulous work of our executive leadership team. Executive Director, I'd suggest King would be responsible for this. And won't we remember you for it, Ms. King? Making sure that we attend all of our meetings. But in all seriousness, councillors, it's wonderful that we have such a high level of diligence around the governance of this great place. I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
That was me.
Sorry,
That was my
I think I'm very tempted.
You'd never know it.
Okay, are there any speaker for the motion? Any speaker against the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. I declare the motion's carried. Just my computer a little bit
Tuesday.
around. Okay, item 9.12, Councillor Support and Expenses Report, January 2024 to March 2024. Can I call for Councillor to move the motion in regarding to this agenda 9.12? Councillor Carter?
As per the officer recommendation, that council notes the councillor support and expenses report for the January 2024 to March 2024 period to be made available via council's website for the term of council.
Thank you. Now, could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Clark? Are there any questions or point of clarification, councillor? Would the mover speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Thank you. Would the second would like to speak for the motion?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Formally second.
Are there any speakers for the motion? Are there any speakers against the motion? Now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda 9, item 9.13. Governance Report, April 2024. Can I call councillor to move the motion in regarding to agenda 9.13? Okay.
Pick me.
Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 approve the updated S6 Instrument of Delegation shown at Attachment 1 and A, note that the instrument comes into force upon the common seal of the Council being affixed to the document, and B, note that upon the instrument coming into force, the previous S6 Instrument of Delegation authorised by Council on 21 March 2023 is revoked, and 2, notes the governance report containing the record of all of informal meetings of councillors and council delegates' reports for April 2024, which will be made available on Council's website for the term of the current council. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, councillor. I call for this councillor to second. Who put their hand? Thomas, Councillor Thomas. Okay, any question upon the clarification, councillor? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I firmly move the motion.
Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Thank you. Are there any speaker for the motion? And a speaker against the motion? With the motion to the vote, all those in favour? Okay. Now I declare the motion is carried. Interesting part. Now, the next item is agenda 10.11, not a motion, 2024/07, duty of care. Can I call Councillor Bernadette Thomas to move the motion in regard to agenda item 10.1?
Thanks, Chair. The motion is that Council, in keeping with the overarching goal, objectives and approaches of the Climate Emergency Strategy, 1. Writes to the Minister for Environment and Water, the Honourable Tanya Plibersek, to embed a duty of care in law, in particular to support the Climate Change Amendment (brackets Duty of Care and Intergenerational Equity) (brackets Bill 2023), and 2. Writes to Dr. Daniel Molino, Member for Fraser, seeking his advocacy efforts to encourage the federal government to support the above legislation.
Thank you. Would I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Hokera. Are there any question or point of clarification, councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll say a few words. So this council acknowledged a climate emergency in 2019. We formed a climate emergency community advisory group in 2020, and that group developed council's first climate emergency strategy, which was formally adopted in 2022, I think, or 21, and then subsequent to that, our climate emergency action plan. So we've got a good grounding in responding to the climate emergency. And I guess something that has sort of developed probably sort of slightly towards the end of that process, or even completely after that process, is the concept of embedding a duty of care in climate change and a climate change response that's associated with that across decisions that are made by government. At the recent Climate Emergency Australia conference that Council hosted jointly with Climate Emergency Australia, it was raised at that conference that we really do need to start looking at how we embed a duty of care into our decision making across, you know, all levels of government really, because if we don't, we're missing the opportunity, and indeed, you know, we're not fulfilling, I guess, our responsibilities that this generation has to future generations to return to a safe climate. You know, that's the language that's in our climate emergency strategy. And that, you know, Maribyrnong has a lot of young families. We've got, you know, a youthful, an increasingly youthful population, and I think that, you know, we owe it to young people to safeguard their futures and their rights, I guess, to enjoy, you know, a safe climate into the future, and that the kind of climate that, you know, people like me have enjoyed throughout most of my lifetime. There is a Senate inquiry going on into this issue at the moment. There were nearly 400 submissions to that, and one of them was from Climate Emergency Australia, which, you know, Council, of course, is a member of, or we're a partner in. And there was also submissions from the students of West Footscray Primary School. Now, their submissions were in colour on posters, and I just do want to read out one of them because each student put in, and it was made a joint submission, and they're made in texture and they've got lots of colour. But the first one reads, duty of care, to whom it may concern, dear, crossed out, Tanya Plibisek, our generations are in danger of one thing, global warming. That's in big red letters, and I know you know what that means, so say ... yes, in very big letters. So our own community, you know, the young people of our own community are asking that the government considers this, and I think, you know, the motion is it's I guess a simple gesture on behalf of our community and the young people in our community to advocate on their behalf to the federal government to include this duty of care into decision making. So I recommend the motion to my fellow councillors, and I also recommend going on and having a look at the West Footscray Primary School.
I'm sure
submission,
Footscray
because it's very
Primary are
good.
absolutely crackerjack.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Councillor
Mayor.
Thomas. Put a second, we'll have to speak to the motion. Councillor
Thanks,
Hogeja.
Mayor. Just briefly, I think the substantive issue's probably been outlined very well by Councillor Thomas. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that our economic system is notoriously short-sighted. That's sort of pretty obvious. And what we're talking about here is, you know, whether or not you believe it, the issue of climate is existential threat. It's at the very least a very large threat to future generations. I think a discussion like this can easily, as you've seen in the media to some extent, and the response, some of the political responses can sort of, I don't know if, what word is, but it can sort of be reduced sometimes to, you know, legalistic sort of conversation. But really, as Councillor Thomas sort of mentioned there in her final comments, it's really more than anything, in some ways, an element of important symbolism to this, because it's not only about making decisions today with a compass, you know, that is oriented to this challenge of climate change, but actually it goes beyond that, because, and I'm glad that you quoted that West Footscray submission, because it's also not just about climate, and as you've seen with the sort of community forces, I suppose, that campaign for this duty of care bill, it's also about buy-in from young people into democracy. I mean, it's no secret, you know, all sorts of studies by all sorts of people that pretty, from all quarters, have shown for now at least a couple of decades the lack of buy-in from young people into, you know, our democratic system. And a big part of it is this, because there's just no faith that politicians are thinking about their future. it's being manifest right now as we speak around other issues, but I mean, I think no one would deny that there is a large amount of young people, let's call it under 30, who are very, at the very least fatalistic about what politicians are doing or will do for them. It's not just climate, it's housing, it's Palestine, a lot of things, but certainly climate has been a big one. So I think it's as much about that, it's about, sort of trying to get, if you like, that buy-in from young people into what democracy can do for them. And this is a big one, so I just keep my remarks to that without sort of sinking into the legalistic or scientific discussion.
There wasn't any.
Thank you, Councillor Hawke. Are there any speaker for the motion? Are there any speaker against the motion? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, look, whilst well-meaning, I've got to say here, councillors, and I actually asked Councillor Thomas if we could, particularly given that there's a Senate committee looking at this matter, I asked if we could hold off on this. What I didn't get to say was, so we could all, and she rejected it, which is fair enough. What I also wanted was a briefing given to this council so we know in detail what it is we are supporting. And that's the key here. Well, whilst I very much appreciate the great work of the children of this city, fantastic. Yes, save the planet, and that is just so important, and I fully agree with it. But we need to know what the implications of any legislative change might be in detail. That's what we're charged with. Councillors, we don't have the luxury of being able to slip into simplistic platitudes or slogans. Sadly, we have a responsibility to be able to justify to our constituency, to our community, exactly why we are doing what we're doing. It's all good and well to be well-meaning. I mean, we could be well-meaning on a number of issues. We could be well-meaning on let's get the medicinal cannabis idea up off the ground. It's a great idea. But unless it's supported by evidence, no, we can't do that. I believe a duty of care around the legislation in the context of climate change. Yes, I think it's important, but I want to know exactly what it is I'm voting on. And quite simply, I don't. I would like to hear the deliberations of the Senate committee before I go further. I want a briefing brought to this council before I give my approval, my support for this type of motion. This is not about slogans, councillors. This is not about simply being well-meaning. This is about trying to get it right. While we're trying to do the right thing, at the same time we have to try and get it right. Otherwise, let's hand the circus over to the clowns completely. We have a responsibility, councillors. Sadly, on this occasion, responsibility has not been upheld. I reject the motion before us.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speaker against the motion? Councillor Carter?
Yeah, I'm speaking against the motion. Some shared concerns with Councillor Clark, but I'll start by saying that the ambition and the intent of what's put forward, I wholeheartedly support, and I would have liked to have supported this, and in fact, I would have liked it if we put a submission in. I think that would have been the appropriate time. I know submissions were extended multiple times and closed on the 23rd of November. I think as a local government authority, understanding that this is a federal government consideration, a submission would have been more appropriate. I absolutely do support the ambition. I'm currently working on delivering a climate change trip for senior federal leaders in Vanuatu, and have spoken to many of the young leaders that were involved at COP27, young leaders that forced the advisory opinion before the ICJ, and looking at these issues. And I hear from them, but we are the local government authority, and I think the concern I share is that this committee has been extended multiple times, the deadline for the report, because of the complexity. Now, there's considerations for scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, and what that means. Now, that is another language to me, because we're in a local government chamber right now. So what I would say is there's an abject lack of background to this motion. There's an assumption that we'll just do it because it's nice to do, and it's not against Councillor Thomas, but it's one of my frustrations with the Greens. It's all the care and none of the responsibility, because we don't know the implications of this. I fully support the intent, because we do need to be looking at generational implications of what we're doing, but we need to, if we weren't going to make a submission, which would have been the appropriate time for a local government authority to act, we should at the very least wait to get some of the detail. Now, I think it's been postponed, or it's been extended, the deadline for the report 4 times, perhaps even 5, but it's due now on the 3rd of June 2024. We don't know the implications of what a statutory obligation or embedding a duty of care in law across these 3 emissions categories, what that even looks like. And quite frankly, we're not supposed to know that. I think the ship has sailed as far as the submissions was the time to speak to the aspiration of our community, but I don't think it's our domain to be weighing into this. And I would like to think that this is a sincere approach. I would have thought that it's not about just using the opportunity of the local government chamber to put forward Greens policy, because it's frustrating if it is. If we go to community intent, that's something I'm fully on site, on board with, because our community, and I'm on the Youth Advisory Committee, we talk about this all the time, but there's a way to do it, and this isn't the way. What I would say is that I think even writing to Daniel Molino, this won't even get to the House of Representatives. So if you want your advocacy to be effective, you'd be writing to the senators representing the state of Victoria, and that's where I do have concerns about the legitimacy of this as a community-led or us championing this action on behalf of our community. I think it's a real shame that we missed the opportunity to put in a submission, but I would welcome the conversation once we actually understand fully the implications of this, and then what steps we might be able to take after the 3rd of June.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Any other speak against the motion? Councillor Twain?
I'll speak to the motion in itself. I'll speak to endorse what has already been said against the particular motion. Again, this is nothing against what is sought to be supported in this particular motion. The ambitions of it is correct. There's nothing wrong with it. And what Councillor said about the youth committees is also correct. I was at the time when, at the very end of that mental health seminar, actually no, not the mental health seminar, it was the environmental seminar, sustainability seminar, which we had, Councillor Thomas, you were there as well last year. Would have been last year, the year before that, with our youth advisory committee and with our local schools as well. We saw the outpour and support for sustainability, for environmental responsibility and for climate control. But one of the things that I can't wrap my head around here is where a council seeks to endorse a bill that presently sits as a bill that has the particular committee which the members of a mixture, and Councillor Carter, you probably know better than myself, a mixture of senators and experts in that particular field.
Senators,
yeah, particularly senators, quality senators, who they themselves have had to extend this 5 times to consider to consider the submissions. Yet we sit here. Granted, you gave us notice of the motion as is required. We sit here to say we will support the bill where senators have taken almost 7 months to make a decision, and potentially a further extension may be sought to provide them with further time to make considerations. It just doesn't seem appropriate for us to make a call like this where we haven't had this same amount of information which these senators would have had at the time, as Councillor Clark would have asked for a briefing
Well, they
as well.
haven't even got the report back to them.
Correct, and that as well. Honestly, if you had provided this once we had seen the report and had a briefing, I don't think councillors would have turned it down. We would have been quite open to the idea of supporting it. It's just premature. That's just simply it. For that particular reason, I wouldn't support the motion. Councillor Thomas, apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Train. I would like to say a few words that I am not supporting that motion. I also would like to thank you, Councillor Thomas, for bringing this norm to the council and attention to understand this motion has been linked into the council climate emergency strategy, which is strategy that I wholeheartedly support. However, I cannot support this motion on embedding a duty of care in law to support the climate change amendment, duty of care and intergenerational equity bills. As I understand, the Senator inquiry, like other councillors said, is underway looking into this matter, and I believe it is too early to vote on this norm. I prefer to hold that any decision on this norm until the finding of the Senator inquiry become public. In summary, that I cannot support this norm as it's standing and recommendation. Councillor Thomas, wait until the Senate inquiry has completed this process. Okay, now could I have, now we have all councillors speak, and I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour?
Oh, sorry,
That's
no.
Two, okay, Councillor Hooker. And all those against? I declare the motion is lost.
I'd like to call a division.
Yes, sure. Councillor?
Oh, yeah, I vote in favour of the motion.
Yeah.
Say your
Can I-
names and your...
Councillor Thomas, I vote in favour
Yeah.
of the motion. Thanks.
Councillor Sarah Carter, River Ward, I vote against the motion.
Councillor Cookland, the Mayor, I vote against the motion.
Councillor Anthony Tran, I vote against the motion.
Councillor Michael Clark, I vote against the motion.
Councillor Hodgkira, I vote for the motion.
Thank you. Now we call agenda item 10.2, another motion 2024/08, support public housing. Can I call for Councillor Hodgkira to move a motion in regard to the agenda item 10.2? Councillor.
Thanks, Mayor. That Council, 1, strongly opposes the Victorian Government's plans to demolish 44 public housing towers across the state, including 127 Gordon Street, Gaskin Gardens in the city of Maribyrnong. 2, calls on the Victorian Government to guarantee the survival and priority of publicly owned and managed housing. 3, calls on the Victorian Government to substantially increase public and social housing dwellings to address the housing affordability crisis. 4, calls on the Victorian Government to review the Victorian Housing Statement, 2024-2034, and the affordability partnerships with industry to include public and social housing in new private developments and remove the misleading category of, quotes, affordable housing, order section 3AB specification of income ranges, which currently applies to a range of housing types that are unaffordable for the vast majority of families and individuals. 5, requests the Mayor write to the Premier and the Minister for Housing to A, outline Council's opposition to the demolition of the public housing towers, including Gaskin Gardens. B, urge the Government to consider a program to renovate the existing high-rise public housing in Maribyrnong and throughout metropolitan Melbourne instead of proceeding with demolition. C, ask that the State Government guarantee an increase in the stock of public housing and additional social housing as part of the Braybrook regeneration. And 6, calls for a further report to Council as part of Council's process of developing our housing strategy that includes 2 dot points. 1, recommendations for revised or amended planning policy and advocacy positions that could be adopted by Council to mitigate the increasing housing affordability crisis in Maribyrnong. Secondly, recommendations on any potential initiatives that could be adopted by Council to mitigate risks and impacts for residents of Gaskin Gardens and of the public housing in Braybrook. Full stop.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgkira. Could I call Councillor will second the motion? Councillor Thomas? Are there any questions upon the clarification, Councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think this is one that we probably all have been paying attention to in terms of what's going on with the housing crisis. In the midst of perhaps, I think, well, arguably the most acute housing crisis faced since any time post-war, the state government, supported by federal efforts, is trying to sell the supply myth, as if building more dwellings will itself reduce rents and purchasing prices. In the context of Australia's property market and the tax laws that supporting it, as the ANZ Chief Economist Richard Nsenga has pointed out, quotes, a supply-first housing affordability strategy is unlikely to result in cheaper dwellings. That's a banker speaking. Of course, there are hundreds of academic papers making the same point. Indeed, if building lots more homes was both profitable and would reduce rents and prices, then the obvious answer to the housing crisis would be a public housing developer. But that's not even part of the debate. The demolition of Melbourne's public housing towers has been sold to the public as part of a, quotes, big build and a benevolent policy, rehousing residents who are living in substandard premises, when in fact its primary objectives are twofold. One, to hand over prime real estate to private developers, and two, to simultaneously take the opportunity to reduce government responsibility for housing by reducing the stock of public housing and shifting the weight of this responsibility to social housing providers. By continuing to divest itself from housing provision and management, the state government may save itself some money, surely will, but it will be at the expense of the guaranteed affordability, security and services that public housing has historically provided. On top of this, by decreasing the stock of public housing, these policies will likely contribute, in fact arguably have already been shown to contribute, to rising private rental rates, especially in inner city areas such as Braybrook. The destruction of public housing is also being masked by the charade of so-called, quotes, affordable housing. In accordance with the state government's definition, a developer can price a one-bedroom unit in Footscray at $440K, to give you an actual real example, and call it affordable housing, even though this price is $60K more than the current median price of a one-bedroom in Footscray. In fact, it's actually more than to be precise or specific, a one-bedroom heritage-listed apartment that's sold in the last few weeks in central Footscray. Similar problems with so-called affordable rental properties. It's also noteworthy that under the current arrangements, developers can also access all sorts of guarantees and likely or potential subsidies to build such, quotes, affordable housing. That's a whole sort of other issue on its own. Fortunately, there is a Victorian Upper House inquiry into this to look into the actual rationale, which hasn't really been revealed, or questions haven't been answered about it, nor anything around the cost modelling for the decision to demolish rather than to renovate, at least in some cases. I'll just finish on the point that I think it's particularly important to consider the fact that something like, I think it's roughly 60% of all residents in these housing towers are over 55 years of age. That's at least according to figures available. And as we know, according to the Council on the Ageing Victoria, this cohort, people over 55, especially women, are in particular suffering, in terms of homelessness and in the context of the housing crisis. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Holgate. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm supporting the motion for a number of reasons. I think the section around affordability, affordable housing is a term that's, in my view, it's totally broken. It over-promises and under-delivers, and we've had recent examples in this chamber of developments which have claimed the affordable housing clause, and councillors supported the development, but clearly by their own calculations, almost none of those units were affordable to people, not just on the lower end of the income spectrum, but sort of higher up the income spectrum. So, the state government does need to do something about housing affordability. It's in control of the planning scheme. Federal government and state government are responsible for providing public housing, And basically they need to do a better job of that, because the job they're doing at the moment is leaving people without homes, and it's putting vulnerable people at risk, the most vulnerable people at risk. So we need more than just platitudes or numbers. We need the crisis solved, and we need, I think, the review, not just a housing statement. We need sort of more detail than a housing statement that is sort of putting housing targets that are unreachable, and we need more, I think, empathy involved in the conversation. We need more understanding from people who have got lived experience about what it means to be in precarious housing, and contributing to those conversations as well, because at the moment it's a bit of an academic exercise, and it's not really, we're not hearing from the people who are sort of at the coalface, and it's young people, but it's also older people as well who are at risk of moving into sort of further older age without housing. So I'm supporting the motion, because I think this is, if not, it's up there with the climate emergency as being, I think, one of the two most important issues that all levels of government need to consider, but particularly state and federal. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Are there any speakers for the motion? Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Carter?
Yeah, very quickly, I'm speaking against this motion. And again, I get really concerned that we're talking about these broad and interchanging social housing with affordable. They're very different things, as articulated. So can we be really specific to what this NOM is about? And that's about the towers as well. So I'd like to just focus on that. And I'm glad to hear that empathy should be brought into this, because essentially this motion, in my view, seeks to deny the most vulnerable residents in our community the dignity that they deserve, the quality of housing, and the state and the community the opportunity to increase the availability of social housing. The Labor government plans to retire and redevelop all of Melbourne's 44 ageing high-rise public housing estates. The towers were built between 1950s and 1970s. They're designed to minimise costs. They were designed to minimise costs and built to significantly outdated design standards. And it was only a few motions ago that you were speaking to the fact that, having sustainability features should underpin any housing program going forward. The towers no longer meet the minimum standards. They don't afford some of the most vulnerable in our community the dignity they deserve. And they fail against noise, sustainability, waste and recycling minimums, bedroom area dimensions, room depth, ventilation, private open space, accessibility being a big one. This wasn't at the forefront of thinking in the 50s in high-rise towers. And it really needs to be. This is an opportunity to increase the yield, to provide conditions that afford that dignity, so that not only will the redevelopment mean households will move into a new home that meets every modern building standard, it will also boost the overall number of social homes across these sites by at least 10%. Now, that's something that we've all said many times in this chamber is a shared ambition, is to want to see the increase in social housing. Now, 10%, whilst affording some of the most vulnerable in our community the dignity of homes that are designed and meet modern standards, should be something that we support. Now, across the sites too, the support for renters, I just want to say it will cost $2.3 billion just to keep that inadequate, not fit for purpose, public high-rise towers in a habitable condition. $2.3 billion. And no dignity afforded to those residents. And then We speak about the need to engage them. Well, each household will have a dedicated engagement officer to help them through the redevelopment process. Approximately 200 staff have already and will support in-person engagement and visiting renters door to door. A dedicated engagement team has been created to provide information to renters and communities. So this isn't just something that's platitudes and numbers. There is a lot of thought that's gone into the engagement. The government knows that this is a disruptive process, but there is a bigger ambition, and that is to afford dignity and the quality of living and to increase the available social housing. So there's interpreters, 150 interpreters were rostered to support the engagement through the first initial page. And just to say finally, these towers were built using a unique concrete construction method, so it was considered about whether they could be retrofitted. The construction method with structural internal walls and low ceiling heights prevents alterations to walls and doorways, corridors, lifts and stairwells to make them compliant with current accessibility and livability standards. So I think we should all really be supporting this. We've been championing through our housing strategy for a very long time. And I do note and agree with Councillor Thomas and Councillor Hawkera's position on how misleading affordable can be. And we've seen that in this chamber. And I think that needs a really good thing. But I think in the context of renewing the social housing stock in these high-rise towers, this is something that we should be behind. This is affording the most vulnerable in our community the very best living standards and the dignity that they deserve. So I vote against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Well, are there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, first I'd like to thank Councillor O'Hara for bringing this motion in its omnibus form to Council, but in bringing it as an omnibus motion, it really does trip over itself and sadly confuses unbelievably the issues. While at one level, you know, they're very committed, myself and I think all of us here, to public housing, the idea of retaining the towers that are remarkably outdated, no longer fit for purpose. And correct me where I'm wrong, Chief Executive, you were at Yarra Council when they tried to, or they in fact managed to increase the size of many of the kitchens and living areas, and that's the best they could do, and that was 15 years ago. No one denies that we have a housing crisis, and we're working to the billio to do something about it. But councillors, I've got to say, apart from myself, I don't think any of the councillors here have had the ignominious experience of living in high-rise. Oh no, it goes beyond you, councillor. It's high-rise squalor, and I call it high-rise squalor. Councillors, I lived in a place in Deptford in London. It was called Speedwell House in Comet Street. It was built back in the 20s, and it was retained for an inordinate period of time. In the end, it was condemned for family habitation, but it was okay for students and okay for squatters. And that's what it's about, the absence of dignity. Earlier in the conversation this evening, I heard councillors speak about climate resilient housing. The high-rise towers fail to address the whole climate emergency issue that we have. By retaining these towers, you're actually committing some of the most vulnerable members of our community that have been alluded to here to some of the most horrific living experiences that you could possibly ask for, just in terms of heating and cooling. That's before you talk about access. You know, I must say, to support the retention of these towers, again, is a demonstration that there's been no serious review of what these towers are like to live in, to dwell in. Not at all. And in many ways, I must say, councillors, for me, Councillor O'Hara, it's a bit of a rerun of the motion of 26 January, where it was a great motion, only you didn't speak to any First Nations elder in the city or the district. You didn't speak to any of the First Nations people at all. You know, the very people that you're supposedly representing were completely excluded from the process. I would suggest the same is obviously happening here. You have not considered what these people really want. For me, what I can't understand here, councillors, there is an upper house inquiry into the high-rise. Wouldn't we wait for the outcome of that inquiry before we made any decisions? You know, the cost of retrofitting something that is not capable of being retrofitted without a fortune being spent, and correct me, Councillor Carter, was it 2.3 billion?
But that's not to retrofit,
No.
that's just to keep it in a
Just to
habitable
maintain.
condition.
It is good, and all I hear of, and I heard Councillor Thomas talk about more. Well, that's right, more. Who's going to pay for this? You know, we need more, but it needs to be targeted. It needs to be understood that what needs to be in place is going to meet the needs of our community. You know, I'm intrigued here. Does Councillor O'Hara seriously think that the government is going to throw the current tenants of those public high-rise towers onto the streets? No, they are looking for product alternatives, councillors, and that is the reality of it. It's okay to grandstand, feel free. There's obviously an election in the air. But if we could actually look at the needs of the most vulnerable people in our community and ensure that their needs are
Point of order,
met.
how many minutes does
sorry.
Councillor Clark get versus everybody else?
sorry.
Honestly.
Councillor Clark, I'm
Councillors,
sorry.
I reject the motion.
Sure, thank you, Councillor. Okay, any other speaker against the motion? Councillor Trent?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I, as much as I love hearing Councillor Clark talk, I too will reject the motion.
She didn't have the timer on, he went.
I won't harp on the points
Need
that
to watch here.
have been laboured on already, but I will harp on some other points that I feel like Councillor O'Hara has not considered in this. I refer specifically in this instance to dot point number 4, in which Councillor O'Hara seeks to remove the misleading category of affordable housing or the Section 38B specification of income ranges. I refer Councillor O'Hara to the particular gazette published on 22 June 2023, page 43 of that particular gazette. Or if you look in the gazette, it's page 1095, but in the PDF form, it's page 42, 43. In that particular gazette, it refers to, as councillors have been made aware of, the income ranges, which are considered to be very low income, and moderate income range. I appreciate Councillor O'Hara hasn't put anything in this particular motion, which will speak to provide an alternative, or to any study which he refers to speak to an alternative. Nothing against him, in that he could well and truly provide that, I would assume, in a future motion. But it speaks, look, Councillor O'Hara, absolutely no offence to you, but it does speak to the lack of quality, the lack of detail in this, in that there is criticism laid everywhere, but no alternative proposed forward. I then also refer Councillor O'Hara to the Planning, Councillor O'Hara to the Planning Environment Act 1987, particularly to Section 30AA of that particular act. Now, I'm not speaking to this as a legal expert of any kind, rather in my capacity as a councillor. In that respect, it refers to the meaning of affordable housing as a variety of different things, which include very low housing income households, low income households, moderate income households. In that respect, it appears to me that Councillor Khera has sort of erred in that if he seeks to get this removed, this category of affordable housing, it makes more appropriate sense that he seeks some sort of amendment to the legislation itself. The Gazette can be changed year in, year out, as you'll see that there was one published in June 2022, that was revoked. There was one in June 2023, that's the current outstanding one. There'll be one in June 2024 this year as well. There's no difference, there's a Gazette published every single year. It does, for me, it lacks that bit of, well, not bit, a lot of consideration. Councillor Clark is correct in noting that there is a Senate inquiry. It makes absolutely no sense where lawmakers, which are continuously advised by experts including the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office and the Solicitor General as well, who would very well be better placed to provide that advice to state government and to lawmakers as to any alternate arrangements. It also confuses me, and I assume some councillors here, that it does not provide council laws, or really community, with the opportunity to have the discussions as to what would be considered appropriate. To simply remove a definition doesn't fix anything. To provide an alternative, now that's a different question altogether. I note that he does say in his, he calls on the government to have a review of the Victorian Housing Statement, 2024 to 2034. But again, that doesn't speak to a review of or an amendment to the definition of affordable housing. I think that lacks a bit of polish. I think the best way is to word it as on this particular motion. Again, Councillor Khera, I state this truly as someone who has spoken many times as to my dismay and my sort of perspectives on the present standing of what is considered to be affordable and social housing. But to put a motion that is undercooked would not benefit the community in any capacity at all. If anything, it places us in a worse position. If we were to advocate on this and then to have these conversations with our local member, our state member, our federal member, and our Senate members as well, which represent the Northwestern Metropolitan Region, you'd probably be a laughingstock.
Okay, your 3 minutes up. Councillor Trent?
So apologies, Mayor, I reject the motion in its entirety.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor Trent. Okay, now, for me, I just want to say a few words about this norm. I would like to share you a story. I came here as a refugee, 1978, with house at the Midway Hostel for about 6 months. Then they moving to the public housing tower in Kensington. So I've lived there for about 6 or 7 years. Then after working 2 and 3 jobs, my husband and I were able to purchase our own home. However, who would like to see this weather and you have no heater, or the heater was broken? Or also, when you go into the community laundry, you only half cycle and then stop. And you have to bring it back to your flat and then rewash by your hand again. So who would love to enjoy that? But, you know, what can you do? You have a home, you have, you know, this is amazing, that's your dream. After working that too many jobs, I was able to purchase a house. I still have friends live in a tower, and then mainly they're elderly people and live there, and they compare from their Australia and their home country, so they have no challenge or no comment. They're lucky to have a home on the top of their head. So they are all majority and need disrepair and need to be demolished, and new contemporary social housing built on this side where people can live a modern environmentally and sound and safe housing fit for the next 30 to 40 years. With adequate heating, cooling, washing, air circulation and space for the family. And I do not believe that renovation of this tower will allow the contemporary and future improvement of this home. So therefore, I really have a look at a consideration people need better a housing, social housing for them. And not only that a roof over their head, but some a better a resource, or for them to live like normal anyone else deserve it. Therefore, I am not supporting this no. Thank you. So, okay. Now I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is lost. Thank you, Councillor. Agenda 10.3, not other motion, 2024/09, condemns Cumberland books, council books ban. Can I call Councillor Hoge Hokera to move the motion in regard to the agenda item 10.3?
Could I please ask Council if I could read to an amended motion, very slightly amended motion, given the subsequent developments post that decision by the Cumberland Council? Yeah?
Yes,
Just ask-
I think you can. You're moving it, aren't you? Or?
No, I don't
Or
know.
governance.
I think you have to lose the initial.
Yeah.
No, Councillor Hawkera can seek the leave of council if councillors want to indicate that they are comfortable or otherwise with that.
Hold on.
So,
Seek leave, so we
I'm
would.
happy to hear.
No, I'm happy to hear, but
You can
whatever the
always vote
updated
against it.
version is.
Through the chair, the only issue that I've got here, Councillor, is that with all motions, there's, I really appreciate being able to read the motion, think about the motion, consider it, discuss it, and then deliberate. We didn't.
We didn't discuss either of the others beforehand.
Yes, because,
So
because,
what's the
and I
difference?
make the point, Councillor, because you and Councillor O'Hara were not available for councillor-only time when the rest of us were, and we were more than happy to discuss it.
That's
And
actually
I-
not true.
and
I was
expressed
available for
my
councillor-only
concern
time,
to the mayor
and other
that you
councillors
were
also
not
said
available,
that they were not
and
available
nor was
too.
Councillor O'Hara.
I was available,
Councillor, it's
but I
not
also
relevant.
said there was
Can we
nothing
just-
on the agenda,
So-
and it was available to you at least a week before it went out into the agenda, so you had plenty of time to ring me to ask me about it.
can we give into the
So-
agenda, please?
I totally understand your point, Michael, but I mean, that still leaves you the option of just voting against it.
Can I just-
Especially given that if you hear it, you'll notice that it's almost what you could call a procedural sort of amendment,
Yeah.
effectively.
The Councillor Trent?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say governance. If the amendment is so minor as to the substance is practically the same, say for a minor change, I'm not sure what the change would be, Councillor Guerra, and if councillors consent to that change,
That's what
we
the
can-
director
and we
just
can
said.
turn-
It's
alternatively,
about
we can turn it
councillors
down
consenting
after
to
we-
it.
Thanks,
Chair-
Councillor.
would we turn to?
Through the Mayor, clause 22.12 of Council's governance rules, except where the notice of motion is to confirm a previous resolution of council, the notice of motion may be amended by the councillor who has submitted it by seeking leave of council prior to it being seconded.
So, so would you hear Councillor Hawke?
I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead,
I'll read it
Councillor.
out. That Council A, and this remains identical, affirms that it welcomes people of all backgrounds, beliefs and cultures, and that the diversity of our community is part of what makes Maribyrnong so special. B, and this remains identical, believes that public libraries should be places where different ideas and beliefs are welcome and where everyone is seen and valued. C, and this remains identical, affirms that everyone should be free to decide what books they wish to borrow from our public libraries. D, and this remains identical, believes that children in rainbow families should have access to books about their families in our public libraries, just like everyone else. And the change here is E. What you see in front of you, the current E and F are just taken out, and a new E to account for the change that Cumberland itself, and sort of explain it, I suppose, and why bother moving this motion, apart from just the outrage, I suppose, that it's noting. E now reads, notes with concern the negative example set by Cumberland Council, bracket New South Wales, in resolving to ban books featuring same-sex parents at their May 1 meeting, semicolon, rescinded at their May 15 meeting on the advice of the Minister that the Council decision contravened the Library Council of New South Wales guidelines on freedom of access to information issued under the Library Act. That's the change one. Then G, I think, is identical. G's it requests that council explore opportunities to expand our library books collections featuring same-sex parents with the support of council's LGBTIQA+ community advisory group.
Mm-hmm. No. Okay, Councillor. Could I call for a councillor for second this motion? Councillor Thomas? Are there any questions upon the clarification, councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the sorry.
Question to Mr. Gosling. Mr. Gosling, who determines what's in our book collection in our libraries now?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The library collection is regularly reviewed to reflect the needs of the community. We have input from the community on that, but the library collection officers determine the specific items.
Councillor Clark?
Thank you. So just in relation to F, requested council explore opportunities to expand our library's book collection featuring same-sex parents with support of council's LGBTQIA+ community advisory group. Are we not doing that already?
We have input from community councillors. We haven't specifically referred the collection to the LGBTIQA+ advisory committee, but we could do that.
Councillor Clark, yep.
Thank you. Mr. Gosling, correct me if I'm wrong. Once a book has been approved by the Commonwealth Censor, there's no other, we as a local government authority are not in a position to ban such books.
No, Councillor, we're not in the practice of banning books, no.
Thank you.
All right, okay. Are there any questions upon the clarification, councillor? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that this motion came from, effectively from community, and in particular from the Rainbow Local Government team who, like many organisations in the LGBTQIA+ space, were appalled, it's probably the simplest word, at the book ban that was attempted, only attempted unsuccessfully by Cumberland City Council. As councils will be aware, you don't have to have been on this council to be aware of the fact that these sort of culture wars have been going on for a long time, and we've had expressions of it in Victoria, not just New South Wales. It's probably a more concrete move by I think it was 4 council, a majority that moved this, and from at least my understanding and the understanding of others involved in sort of putting together this from the Rainbow Local Government team, this was, the back down was effectively forced, if you like, on that council by the minister. A motion like this is obviously important in terms of simply restating. I mean, I know that this has been stated before, but it's restating our support for our communities and for the diversity of our communities. It also allows for organisations like the Rainbow Local Government team to then use a motion like this and others that other councils might pass to get that sort of advice that Michael referred to there in terms of the existing laws that prevent that, may prevent that in the case of Victoria. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, someone, the ruling made by the Minister of New South Wales hasn't had a parallel here as such. Maybe it has.
Point of order, just to assist. The Commonwealth Censor, the Federated States, or the Commonwealth of Australia, sits under the aegis of, for books and the determination of what is appropriate, under the aegis of the Commonwealth Censor as such. State law is subservient to Commonwealth law.
I realise that in principle, but I mean, it was not the Commonwealth Minister who intervened in the case of Cumberland, so that's the reason I raised it. But
He didn't need to.
But they felt the need to. Anyway, I won't get into that. Anyway, I think the substance of it is pretty obvious. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yep, okay. Thank you, councillor. Would the seconder would like to speak to the motion?
No, formally seconded.
Okay. I didn't speak for the motion.
I will.
Yep.
I'm pleased to see, Councillor O'Hara, that you've reworked this motion since it was first submitted, because there was a lot in there that I couldn't have supported. But I think this is inoffensive, bordering on kind of ineffective, because we have a proud commitment to our rainbow families. You know, I was really pleased as, you know, Mayor to launch the LGBTQIA+. And the former version of this one kind of, you know, conducting an audit of our books, you know, for Ida Hobbit Week last year when I was Mayor, we had a range of those books there, and I would have been strongly opposed to committing resources to conducting an audit when there is no threat to having these books in our collection, and we do have a collection. Because it would have been, as the CEO had pointed out to all of us, quite a substantial piece of work. And I know, having been in Footscray last week, I mean, people want us to fix the footpaths and things. I do get worried when we have quite a few notices of motion, which are all well-meaning, but ineffective to some extent. And I think we're beginning to deviate from what are, you know, some core issues that residents are coming to me. They're not feeling heard when we're putting up these motions, but not addressing broader issues like roads and footpaths. So I'm concerned. Like, I do support this, but we do have a commitment. It was never threatened. This council has a policy commitment. This council has a collection of books, and Councillor Clark has gone into that. So I really do appreciate it. I just don't know if this is the burning issue that needed 3 iterations of something when it's impacting a council in another state and doesn't reflect this cohesive, progressive council which has a policy position on supporting LGBTQIA+ families. But I do commend the motion.
Thank you. Okay, any other speaker for the motion? Councillor
Yeah, and I can only echo the sentiments of Councillor Carter, Councillor O'Hara. I agree that your latter motion, which I would have again appreciated earlier correspondence about.
Can I make a point of order? There is only
excuse
this
me.
motion, though. There's not a previous motion. There's this one.
Which was amended
Which was
on the floor
amendment
tonight.
on the floor
Yeah, no, but I
tonight.
think
So
you're
what he didn't
referring
know what
to
was happening.
something
Licence goes both ways, Councillor
Cumberland
Thomas.
Council
come on.
removed
It's
this last week. We had a COP last night where this could have been considered. My point is, and I'm glad that the audit component of the motion is removed, because what's interesting here, and I'll seek direction and guidance from the Executive Director Gosling on this matter.
Can I make a point of order? In the motion that's in the agenda, there is nothing about an audit. So
Thank
I don't
you,
know why
Councillor.
Councillor Clark
We
keeps
have all
referring
taken
to
this
that.
tonight.
Speaker, please.
Thank you.
It's a simple
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
There's nothing in that
Councillor
motion.
Thomas.
about an audit.
Thomas.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Chair.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So, what's remarkable here is that it's our librarian staff that determine what is going to be in our libraries.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it wouldn't be you, Mr. Gosling, even though you're the Executive Director, you wouldn't be determining what the library collection consists of.
No, that's correct, Councillor.
Okay.
So the only people who could actually do an audit as was originally intended would be the very same staff that are responsible for the purchases of these books.
Okay, Councillor, you have
My-
1 minute if you want to say
Thank you.
anything more. Yeah.
Your Worship, I do appreciate that. My point is quite simply affirming what was observed by Councillor Carter. Our library staff engage with our community. They understand what the needs of our community are and the wants and aspirations of our community. We are an inclusive place. The LGBTQIA+ community know that they're not just welcomed here, but we want them to make this a destination, a home. We look to make sure that there are appropriate reading materials that support them and their families, and they all know that they are welcome here. They are welcome to live here, and we appreciate those LGBTQIA+ members of the community who work for us in our great city.
So your time is up, Councillor.
I commend the motion to you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other speaker for the motion? Councillor Trent?
Councillor Garrett, I think a minor amendment. It's not an actual change to the substantive. It's just there's a minor spelling error. If you're okay for me to
Yeah, go
point it.
for it.
It's just where you've got on the advise. Super minor.
Second language problems.
Sorry, I'm a bit ESL myself sometimes. I'll be as brief as I can, Mayor. When I saw the motion, save and except for the fact that there was the rescission of the motion, which I thought it was a bit inappropriate for Councillor Carroll to put the motion through because of that rescission. Given that there's been an amendment to that particular component, I have barely any issues with it. The main question I put is sort of as Councillor Carter has alluded to, are we not posturing a little bit where we don't need to? Especially in light of the LGBTIQA plus strategy that we all in this chamber, we all supported back in 2022, which between the pages of I think 11 to 15 set out council's visions and our strategy. Saving except for that, I don't see any issue with that. It just puts council in a position where we're having to reiterate ourselves time and time again for something that is continuously supported by councillors. I commend the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Train. Any other speaker against the motion? No. Now I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? No, again, I declare motions carry. Ooh, okay. For councillor question time, we now move to the councillor question time. Question asked by the councillor must be in accordance with the rule 53.5 of the governance rule. The councillor question time is limited to 15 minutes unless an extension is resolved by council. Any question, councillor? No. If no question, I declare the question time is closed. Now, urgent business. Councillor, any item proposing urgent business for consideration? No. Okay. Then, councillor, confidential business. Advise councillor there is no confidential business at the meeting. Okay, the councillor, now I declare the meeting closed at 9:07. Thank you very much, councillor.
Councillor.